Today, we are graced with the presence of a veteran typographer and visual communicator par excellence, Eiichi Kono, for our second keynote session. Kano-san discovered his profound love for typography in the photo-optical industry of Japan, where he became fascinated with the universality of the Latin alphabet. This impelled him to begin a period of formal training at the London College of Printing, which subsequently included his time at the Royal College of Arts, this for information graphics, as linked with the Readability Print Research Unit. His first commissioned work was a white paper diagram for the London Clearing Banks, which was followed by the redesign of Johnston Underground Sans font for the London Tube, a typeface known as New Johnston. His project also involved space-saving and legibility study of a phone directory for the British Telecom Group. Committed to sharing his knowledge and typographic expertise, Kono-san has taught typography at the University of Reading and has been a prolific master of graphic design, corporate identity, and publication design, working for firms such as Pearson and The Economist. Presently, he is directing a team to develop optimal legibility for Japanese on-screen fonts with Microsoft. Kono-san has signaled his intention to donate his drawings and artworks for the New Johnston font to the Edward Johnston Foundation. He is also looking to work on digitizing the original Johnston metal and wood types, as well as providing extra weights to the font for academic purposes. And finally, Kono-san is a dear, dear friend of India, having been closely associated with our own design grandmasters, at least two of them, both of them now gone, Professor R.K. Joshi and Sudarshan Dheer. It was really nice of Kono-san to have hosted them when they were in London. Over to you, Kono-san.
I was born in Japan and grew up in Japan for 30 years or so. And then I moved to England for 40 years. And then I moved to India for 4 days so far. And when I was working in Tokyo, I had the opportunity to visit Hong Kong, a wonderful place. And then I picked up the dictionary because my English wasn't really good. Almost no English. And so I picked up the dictionary, was the Oxford Advanced Learners Dictionary. And it says experiment, a scientific test that is done in order to study what happens and to gain new knowledge. And always to study what happens and then to gain new knowledge is my sort of entire life. But often to study what happens, I didn't know what happens even. And I just struggled. And then I realized I learned a little bit of things. So I tell you now. This is the 1969, so exactly 50 years ago, this pamphlet, sort of leaflet, was produced, beautifully printed in the letterpress. It's letterpress is an invention of Gutenberg time, and beautifully set with a metal type. And then it was for type conference 50 years ago. And its school was the Rochester Institute of Technology. It's very much like here in America. Very good college, university. And Hermann Zapp was the guest speaker. And then Dean of the graphic department and typography gave this comment. in these hectic times, when we sometimes feel as though we are being taken over by computers, still we are saying sort of taken over by AI or etc. And then I feel reassured by the fact that typography is still a field of such great interest. And it's a field of great interest. That's great. And back, two years back from 1969, 1967, that is the time I joined company. I had a job, lucky enough, after struggle a bit. I studied photography, and so that was the sort of chance I was able to get a job at an optical company, not a photographer. The company was producing optical instrument, famous company, founded 1833, so 19th century. Then Carl Zeiss is a name, and then that's my office. And photograph was taken by American astronaut with a Carl Zeiss lens. And my job was to produce Japanese version of the kind of European language catalogs produced in Germany originally, so written in German or English or French, and translators translated, and then the Japanese copywriters or translator or the typesetters made Japanese version, and then I was actually sort of supervising production of it. I wasn't a graphic designer, but this was a time I started talking to printers and graphic designers, typesetters. So gradually, I started my interest, my personal interest in typography. So my, in a way, career actually started 50 years ago. And then this was the sort of poster and panel for trade exhibition Carl Zeiss did in Tokyo. And I actually designed it without knowing anything, but still looks all right. And the problem I found was just when it's translated into Japanese, and then all text matter is replaced from German or English setting to Japanese setting, and then whole appearance looked very different. Of course it's different. Letter forms are different, everything different. And I was struggling to combine some sort of European feel of the catalog and any other documents, from origin of it. And then I was lucky enough, I was introduced to a Japanese printer who knew a lot about the European typography. That person became my teacher for several years. And then almost at the same time, in the same period, 1968, the interesting films came in. And that was the 2001 Space Odyssey, famous film. And title is set in Gilson's. Even I didn't know the typeface name even. And then other part of it, then it's all set in different the typeface. It's a Futura, and it looks identical to me at that time. It is very different, and difference. Gilson's was designed and then I think came into the market 1928 or 7 or around that time. And then Futura was probably much later, 1930 or around that sort of time. And both are definitely influenced by Edward Johnston's underground alphabet. And Aurobindo Patel this morning mentioned about what a great work Edward Johnston has done. Then 1974, after 7 years or so, I worked in an industry, and then I just decided I just want to do typography in Latin alphabet to learn. Maybe I could learn language as well, a little bit of it. So I quitted my job, left my job, and then I traveled to England, and I became a student, so my hairstyle changed. And I was doing a graphic design and the typography at a place called London College of Printing in 1974. You can see 1970s fashion. So I changed my even trousers. Yeah? Then my friend of mine is there. And then I had a wonderful teacher, fourth person from far end is my first London College of Printing class teacher, a wonderful man. And of course, I was really afraid of going into a classroom because first time in my life in a British school. And then I was expecting my teacher would be Mr. Jones or Mr. Brown or Mr. Smith. And he introduced himself, say, "Good morning, I'm your teacher, and my name is Toirokashi Mukherjee." So, and I'm from originally India. So my first sort of, study started with English with Indian flavor, and Indian teacher is teaching me English typography, which is great. And then still, we've been friends a long time. And I graduated and still long hair, now. And then the first job was surprisingly, it's revising Edward Johnston's underground alphabet for London Transport. It didn't come to me directly, of course, but I was given a job after 5 years study, lucky enough. So I started working for design company. So I had no idea. So London Underground typeface. Since 1916, since it's introduced. And then when you go to London, you see all these signs and letters. Then in London, big crafts and design museum, art museum called the Victorian Albert Museum. Inside the museum, you see a bus stop sign. Very odd. But then, besides the bus stop sign, and then you see a large poster like a sort of broadsheet, just ABC. That is Johnston's underground alphabet. 1863, more than 150 years ago, London Underground was introduced. Here is now, India is, Mumbai is digging up. Yeah? And then it's 1900 around, still congestion was absolutely amazing in London like this. Many of them are just horse-drawn carriages. So definitely needed underground, but not many people are using it. One thing is afraid of it, not used to it. And then the other thing is you don't know where the station is. Train station normally, station like sort of, architecture, but you can see, even if a big signs here, and then Victoria Station, it's a big station now, but before it looks like this. And Westminster Bridge Station is like this. So people don't know where to even go into. So still, 1910, Oxford Street is amazing traffic jam. Edward Johnston was asked, because he was a master in calligraphy, letter forms, and to design something really fit in the purpose, a good alphabet. And that's what he designed, up and lowercase. And beautiful. And then also, they had some sort of original sign, but he revised it. Beautiful. It's called a roundel. And then it's combined, famous London Underground map has been developed. And then immediately it changed. You can see the entrance very well. Even at night you can see the entrance of station. And nowadays, like this, underground. And this is Edward Johnston, in around 1900, about 100 years ago. And he even devised the writing desk and angle and things, and his beautiful handwriting with pens. He was the person who actually reminded us it's a good calligraphy, you need good flat top pen. And he taught at Central School of Art and then Royal College of Art, where I studied. And he produced, he wrote wonderful the textbook called Writing and Illuminating and Lettering. And 1906, this was published. And then this has been absolutely sort of Bible for art and design students. Everyone is given, and they studied it until 1960. And then I came to London, 1970s, so even I didn't know, even if I was asked to do some work on Johnston's work. So that sort of ignorance, I started, my career here. And then his underground alphabet, proportion is based on Roman alphabet. Roman alphabet, this is a Trajan alphabet. 2,000 years ago, it was most beautiful proportion people actually sort of regard. So you can see C and D and O is very much rounded shape. And lowercase, Johnston was suggesting sort of foundational hand for people to study first, lowercase. And so really calligraphy is about 10th century. It's round hand. So you can see how he did it. He was trying different characters. And since then, many different posters are produced. This is I took a photograph when people are visiting London Transport Museum, where about 5,000 posters were made. Every poster is actually commissioned by a good artist, illustrator, and graphic designers are commissioned to do the job for over almost 70 years. And they are beautiful, and then beautifully fit the Johnston's alphabet. All these beautiful things are produced with wood letters for letterpress printing. And small one, London Transport didn't have a facility or anything, or even a budget, so they just substituted Gilson's. And Gilson's, it's really, Eric Gill designed it, but actually it's Johnston designed it, I would say, because Johnston actually taught Eric Gill, and Eric Gill is a pupil, and then both of them became well-known sort of calligrapher and also letter-making people. So London Transport asked them to develop further, and then also Monotype Company, which was height of the Western typography sort of time, 1920s, 30s. Then Johnston wasn't really interested in perhaps, and then A. Gill just sort of, he took over whole thing, and then Gilson's were produced. But by that time, problem was it's everything moving 1970s towards the photo composition system, and some of them are computerized. And then even originally designed metal type, it's a Helvetica or Frutiga, Adrian Frutiga's Universe, and even Gilson's and Paul Renner's Futura, all these become photo composition systems integrated. But Johnston's alphabet just remained untouched because London Transport, that's exclusively used, not belong to typeface company like a Linotype and Monotype, or nowadays Adobe or the other companies. So it is the tide of many different typefaces come out through photo composition system. It's like a tsunami sort of time. And then Johnston, Johnston's one of the somebody, artist draw. He looked very tired. So by 1970s, so that was the time my experimental time came. So it's just happened. And then what I discovered was keeping Johnston fit, how to do it. And originally, Johnston had just only two ways, I mean, lacking lowercase for bold. So I started off just very traditional graphic design too, scalpels and the magnifying glass and then everything by hand, and then tracing it with a tracing paper. And then soon I thought I really ought to find out something a bit more, which means London Transport wanted to use Johnston alphabet for everything through photo composition system as a typeface, as a font. Then what happens if it's reduced in a very small size, like a 6-point for pocket map and brochures and things? And then original Johnston's regular weight didn't hold very well. So after some experiment, and then I asked the company, my boss, to buy expensive photostat machine. And 1980s and beginning of 90s, people used to this sort of a large, kind of a very high resolution camera. And then also because I knew which microscope to use for measuring small types and things, so I asked my friend to send me a 20 times magnification of small microscope with the measurement, you can see it, and you can actually measure up to hundreds of millimeter. So 6-point, and then you can actually measure what serif width and serif thickness would be. So I made also my own the scale. It's just a film, but very precisely I made with a photostat machine. And then I was able to shift, and then spacing things to work it out, and lots of notes and things making. And while I was doing it, Johnston had these full stop and a comma, full stop and a comma, and all this sort of. And then I noticed he used the diamond shape for question mark and exclamation mark. So I changed it, tried to it. You can see my experiment. And then also 1 and 4, Johnston made very different, slightly different shape, but I was conscious about for tabular setting, for timetables or financial sort of, so really needed to adjust it. These things, I wasn't taught anything because at school, at that time, no one actually had any training or no teaching program for font making or typeface making, because that's a completely specialist field. And my company was a design company, graphic design company, and just boss asked me to just make a bold weight of lowercase for. So he wasn't really thinking much of it, but just even I didn't realize, I myself was expanding the project itself. And then London Transport actually accepted it. And because I showed my result of it, it's 3 different weights are necessary, not just regular and bold, but between that, medium. And these are my artwork. And different characters as well. So 2 weights, and then lacking lowercase, I produced all these, and then probably nearly 1,000 characters over 16 or 18 months. Took me a long time, but anyway, I completed it. This is a recent work. I made this diagram for comparison. Original Johnston is the left-hand side, and new Johnston is right-hand side. Quite a different shapes, but no one really spotted, even if big signs and things. And X height, early on, some sort of presentation talking about, but X height is different. You can see G and I increase X height for small size to hold. And then also, as weight increases, you really ought to increase X height as well. So pocket map now, they're able to use up and lowercase. And 1983, finally, I saw what I did. A poster was appeared in a London Underground station. This was me. And Johnston was very pleased, I think. And I think just this quote from a novel written by, I think, an Italian author is, everything needs to change, so everything can stay the same, which something sort of interesting thing. So Johnston Offred project was 1979 till 1981, and then a bit of a rest, and then 1983 is the project for British Telecom. British Telecom had a problem, which means telephone directory or telephone book, A4 size, and then thickness of telephone book was the 900 pages or nearly 1,000 pages. And newsprint, not very good quality paper, but and then full of the subscribers' telephone users' names are listed. And 6 million already in 1980s subscribers in Britain, and 24 million copies produced. And then paper is 7,000 tons of papers used. And the cost for production is 10 million pounds already at that time. And the equivalent is of how many trees necessary is almost 300,000 trees would be necessary to produce that amount of paper. So, problem is every year subscribers are increasing. So already when British Telecom asked me to look into how they could reduce the size of it, pages or space. And then they asked the HMSO, Her Majesty Stationery Office, government organization who had IBM computer to analyze. I don't know how they analyzed it, but they said 5%, up to 5%, maybe 2 or 3% of it could be saved. But in my case, I don't know, I didn't have an IBM computer, or even Macintosh or Windows machines didn't exist. So I was just a graphic designer. What reminded me of this is a slave ship and how many slaves shipped and what sort of way. That was when I was studying graphic design, and tutor showed us and one of the diagrams designed in 200 years ago or 300 years ago. Some was amazing. So typeface is used, Gothic, which was designed and produced 1935 or something, a long time ago. But it's been actually industry standard. Most of classified pages or listings are used like this. So British Telecom also using it. What I noticed on a page is so many white lines in the page. And when I looked at it carefully, you can see the red side of it. And name first, and then address next, and then telephone number. But address and telephone number in between is a 3 so-called leader dots, 3 dots. And then I said to British Telecom Design Office, why did you use 3 dots between? If you just reduce to 2, then even a double line would be a single line. And they actually set it that sort of way for new edition. And then what they discovered was 18 pages, 2% immediately saved from 900 pages. So that was the beginning. 3 dots to 2 dots become 2 lines become 1 line. And then I started looking at so many different anomalies could be saved. And very long dash between 2 numbers, you can see district code and the number, and that can be shortened like a hyphen. And then other thing is, of course, line space, etc. Then I made this diagram and I show it to British Telecom and then carried on. And then what I did, again, if nowadays you can actually easily make experiment with InDesign or whatever, but at that time, no, not such things. So I had a camera, so I increased the 6-point typeface to 24-4 times bigger. So I can actually cut them up and then stick them together, and then immediately you can see nearly 15% or 20% you can reduce. So I made a presentation like this. And then my presentation down there is very extreme side. And this side, extreme side, is beginning to be rather difficult to read. So that's legibility-wise. So I was going to do more typeface design itself, which means changing certain characters, characteristics of Bell Gothic. But then I discovered Bell Centennial, which was designed a few years before that by Matthew Carter for New York Telephone Directory. That was beautifully designed and fit for purpose. And then other thing is it's copyright free. Bell company, now it's called AT&T, and then also Matthew Carter. They are not really interested in keeping copyright or anything. So every linotype composing machine, phototypesetting machine, and you can actually use the. So I made an experiment and set it, and more or less the same sort of result. And then I made a full page of paste-up job to do it, and 3 columns. And instead of repeating surname, some of them are very short, it's okay, but some people have very long surnames. So omitting surname, just leaving initial or so. And then 4 columns to the page. And then that was introduced, and then literally 10%, so nearly 3,000 tons of paper every year savings were made. So this was a very successful project. This is a wonderful sort of illustration of Stanford University's library. And then this is a Japanese the letter tree. You saw the Hong Kong University's professors, but in Japan we use also Chinese origin kanji character. This is a book. This is a grove, 2 trees, and 3 trees, a forest. Very clever Chinese invention, I think. We are lucky enough to adopt Chinese writing, but language is so different, we had to develop our own phonetic script. That's what comes on. And Microsoft asked me whether any good Japanese font for on-screen reading. That was a problem. And I said none, because they are all designed for print production, not on-screen reading. And on-screen reading font specifically for that purpose was designed by Matthew Carter in 1995 or 6, which is called a Badana. And every Windows machine has a Badana already. It's open type, so you can transfer to a Macintosh. And then new font, I insisted you should make it, but it is very much trouble to make it, because Japanese industry standard, one font contains over 23,000 characters. It's a problem we inherited from China. And this is a booklet for presentation I actually made, set in typeface called Meirio. Took about 6 years so for producing it. And in this diagram, top one is a Chinese origin kanji character, and then 2 gray and green, both are different kind of phonetic script. Each has about 50 of them. So instead of 26 or 25 or for European languages, we have about 50 or 48. And then 2 different phonetic script we use. And then plus we use alphabet. So 4 different characters we mix for typesetting. And then kanji character actually almost 2/3. And but kanji characters are used for normal reading text. It's only just 20 to 30%. Others are all phonetic script. That's a sort of difference. The red part of it is a kanji character. Others are all phonetic script. That's how Japanese the text looks like. And font is, as you know, it's all control point too. And then when you see the screen, it's RGB pixels. And Microsoft, around 2000, they developed special sort of software called ClearType, which has control on subpixels, red, green, blue. So it gives a much better look of it. So they are very much ambitious, not only just Latin fonts or phonetic script to do it, Japanese, and that's why they asked me to look into. And big problem is, because a kanji character has sometimes lots of strokes, and you can't really, cope with it. So what I suggested was a stroke reduction. Stroke reduction is from actually Chinese or Japanese calligraphers' style. And when they are simplifying it, quickly writing, as you see, so still 1 or 2 strokes are omitted, still you can actually read it. We can read it. And then also harmonizing different sort of writing system, fonts, letters. So I made diagram and the specification and then handed over to Matthew Carter. And then we worked out where the baseline would be. And then top one is new font, Medio, and letter width for phonetic script is much shorter, but Japanese old fonts or typefaces always just given entire M space for the body size. And that's, I tell you, sometime I was experimenting the computer program to find out optical spacing. And this is a final result, before and after. And then still Microsoft old font is MS Gothic. And then Medio, new one. Medio comes from a Japanese word for clear. Then Bill Gates very pleased. And then I made a booklet. And then we had a presentation in 2006. And then 2007, Medio was introduced. So if I have a bit of time, and then I just carry on a bit. I do logo design as well. And this was the Royal Academy of Arts in London, very old institution. And they actually originally employed some graphic design company. And they liked it, but they're not sure about. And then they asked me to look at it. So I did like this. And nothing changed, but very subtle change. And then they liked it. They used it for, I think, over 15 years or so. And then they changed it to something different. This is a television company's logo, ITN, Independent Television Network, and a big company. And the television screen looked like this. And then I changed it to like this, single color. And before, after. And Pearson is a big publishing parent company of Financial Times or The Economist, Penguin Book, and newly appointed CEO somehow wasn't sure about this. It's a good Aurobind friend, so I was asked to look into, and then what I did is this, and single color, simpler, and then I used Hermann Zappu's Optima as a base. So before, after. And this Tate Gallery, Liverpool, before Tate Gallery was amalgamated, the Liverpool had this. It's a famous designer called Edward Wright. Really interesting sans serif he made, but again he wasn't there. People are not sure about it. So I did like this, just to brighten up. The reason I did was the Liverpool was a harbour city, and then dockyard, all the dockyard was converted into the art gallery, and then architect actually had a color scheme of orange and blue. So this is what I did. Thank you very much.